Sam Darnold was very, very bad a couple of weeks ago, 4 interceptions, right? Well, how about this one? He's now facing the Vikings. Oh boy, this is a huge revenge spot for Darnold. 11.5-point favorites. And Vikings DC Brian Flores knows Darnold well, and he has some plans on how to defend him.
He did a lot of great things when he's here, and clearly those things are continuing to show up for him out there in Seattle. He's doing a great job. I'm happy for him, but we will blitz him this week, that's for sure.
Yeah, the line has moved. I thought it was I thought it was the best line on the board when it was 9.5, 10. I still think at 11.5, Seattle's the side. I think right now they're going to start maybe a rookie for Minnesota. It's going to be ugly. Seattle, by the way, they're going to play well because they had that game against Jacksonville. They dominate the first half, and then the defense doesn't really show up in the second half. So it's Sean Payton always says the best weeks of practice are when you win ugly because you can really coach your team hard. So I like Seattle comfortably in this one.
Yeah, so you mentioned they're starting the rookie. His name is Max Brosmer. If you look up a picture of this guy, he's got the facial hair of like a mid-century French artist. He can't grow like a real goatee. It could be like a Bond villain. I don't think he has any chance going into Seattle. I know.
All right, let's refrain from poking fun at his looks at this juncture. Now, I am aware that Brian Flores was being somewhat facetious with his remark. But if I'm being completely transparent, I actually view it as a somewhat feeble comment from him. He did deliver it with a smile, of course, but the underlying implication is clear. He's suggesting that Sam Darnold can't handle the pressure. For a coach, for someone who has worked directly with Sam, who was part of the same organization, I just find it to be, I don't know, I think it's actually a pretty weak, almost petty comment, the way I see it. But moving on. This Seattle team is going to elevate its performance for Sam Darnold. I've expressed this sentiment previously, and on numerous occasions. It's one of my most firmly held beliefs, and it consistently proves to be true. Teams have a tendency to rally intensely behind a teammate when that individual is facing a former club, a previous chapter of their career. That dynamic becomes the central narrative. That is the focal point the entire team and coaching staff will build upon. That is where all the motivation, the collective energy, and the palpable excitement will be derived. We witnessed this phenomenon repeatedly. We observed it with the Los Angeles Rams versus the Detroit Lions, with Jared Goff at the helm. We saw it with an offensive coordinator and with Cliff Kingsbury when the Washington Commanders were scheduled to play the Arizona Cardinals, given his history as their former, dismissed head coach. I pointed it out then, stating, that's going to be a massive game for Cliff. The team will rally behind him. It was almost amusing because Arizona Cardinals supporters attempted to argue, no, that's not accurate. Even some Commanders fans were skeptical, saying, no, that isn't true. But what happened after the game? Everyone was celebrating with Cliff Kingsbury. He was right in the middle of it all, receiving pats on the back from everyone. That is precisely how this works, and that was just for an offensive coordinator. This is the standard pattern. Consequently, the Seattle Seahawks, my apologies, the Minnesota Vikings, while they treated Sam quite fairly and the relationship was mutually advantageous, ultimately made the decision, we are not proceeding with you as our future. Correct? When it came down to it, they did not affirm, we want you here unconditionally. We are prepared to compensate you appropriately. It's not as if he was demanding an exorbitant contract. They essentially communicated, all right, we'd like to retain you, but we aren't willing to meet your financial expectations or provide you with the sense of long-term stability, or whatever the specific reason was. The team is aware of this. Sam is acutely aware of this. They want to defeat the Minnesota Vikings. They want to comprehensively dismantle the Minnesota Vikings. To be perfectly fair and clear, and this is an aspect I admire about this Seahawks squad because they are a very mature and intelligent group, it is not necessarily going to be transformed into the Sam Darnold show. The game plan won't be, let's have Sam attempt 50 passes for 400 yards. It might unfold that way organically based on the flow of the game, but this team is far too shrewd for such a one-dimensional approach. They are too well coached, too systematically organized, and there is simply too much on the line. They are a legitimate, bona fide Super Bowl contender without any shadow of a doubt. Therefore, this defensive unit is going to be primed and ready. They are just going to relentlessly attack, attack, attack. They are going to pursue and harass this Minnesota Vikings offense with immense intensity. It's going to be a formidable challenge. This is what will be particularly intriguing because it raises the question, what will they actually require from Sam Darnold and the offensive side of the ball? And if the response is, I'm going to send pressure, I'm going to blitz him, well, Sam Darnold has performed exceptionally against the blitz this season. His statistics against defensive pressure have been superior to those of Patrick Mahomes this year. We can cease the pretense that the singular method to defeat Sam is to simply blitz him, and that will resolve everything. It's a simplistic and flawed notion. If that were genuinely the case, he would not have a place in the National Football League. He would not have sustained a career for this duration. He would not have achieved the level of success he has attained. So we can all collectively settle down. Consider Sam Darnold's performance last season. With the Minnesota Vikings, when opposing defenses sent extra rushers, his statistics were remarkable. 12 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, and approximately 1,400 passing yards. So by all means, proceed with blitzing him. I anticipate he will rank among the top 6 quarterbacks in touchdown passes thrown under blitz conditions. And look at this crucial differentiator. Every other quarterback listed above or near him either has just a couple more touchdowns or a similar number, but they all have interceptions to their name. He is the sole outlier. He is the only passer in that upper echelon who registered 0 interceptions when facing pressure. So, I encourage you go ahead and blitz him. He was also ranked in the top 8 for passing yards accumulated against the blitz, maintained a completion percentage around 65%, and possessed the highest passer rating in the entire NFL when confronting extra pass rushers. So, I say again, go ahead and blitz him. I dare you. Furthermore, Sam Darnold was ranked in the top 4 for the number of times he was pressured. Joe Burrow, who operated behind a comically, almost hilariously inadequate offensive line, was pressured 248 times. Sam Darnold was pressured 236 times. I initially assumed Burrow would have a significantly higher count, and while he did have a vastly greater number of total dropbacks, 725, which is an insane figure, the point remains. Joe Burrow was also compelled to release the football considerably quicker, but regardless of the specific context, the fact stands that Sam Darnold was pressured extensively, and he managed those situations admirably. So let's all just relax. This situation vividly reminds me of the defensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders in the period leading up to the NFC Championship game. He was quoted saying, "Oh, this Philadelphia Eagles team, they've been tremendous. Jalen Hurts is a phenomenal player, but Jalen Hurts prefers to run the football. We're going to hit him." He explicitly stated, "We're going to hit him." Well, the ultimate reality was that they couldn't. They simply could not hit him effectively enough. They couldn't contain Jalen Hurts. They couldn't stop Saquon Barkley. They couldn't cover Devonta Smith. They couldn't limit A.J. Brown. And the Eagles proceeded to hang, what was the final score? 55 points or something along those lines. The point is, defensive coordinators frequently enjoy engaging in verbal discourse. They like to make pronouncements. This current scenario strongly evokes that memory for me. If the coordinator determines he will run the ball, and if a strategic decision is made for him to carry the football, we will treat him as a running back and we will hit him accordingly. So that is their choice if they wish to subject him to the physical punishment typically associated with a ball carrier. If they prefer to avoid that, they will endeavor to keep him contained within the pocket. And what was the ultimate result? Jalen Hurts completed 20 of his 28 pass attempts for 246 yards, achieved a passer rating of 110, threw for 1 touchdown, added 16 yards on 10 rushing attempts, and scored 3 touchdowns on the ground. The final score was a lopsided 55-23, and they were a perfect 7 for 7 in the red zone. So, these defensive coordinators invariably relish the opportunity to make bold statements. That is precisely what this reminds me of. At the very least, those Washington Commanders had earned their place in the NFC Championship game. At least that coordinator had a player of Jamin Davis's caliber on his roster. Apparently, according to one commentator, the Minnesota Vikings have a French painter on their team, or something to that effect. I'm not entirely certain what he was referring to. I was only partially listening when he began describing his physical attributes. So I absolutely adore this. I love this entire situation. Now listen, I am typically the type of person who advocates for everyone to simply utter the correct diplomatic statements at the microphone. Remain neutral, be complimentary, and so forth. I consistently maintain that if I were in a position of authority, a head coach, a general manager, an owner, I would institute a firm policy ensuring everyone understands the protocol. You make neutral statements at the microphone. You express nothing but positive sentiments about the opposing team. Everything should always be, I'm genuinely excited. They are a great team we are preparing to face. We anticipate receiving their absolute best effort, and we are looking forward to the challenge, right? Just nothing but bland, inoffensive, generic commentary. That's the ideal, right? It's the classic adage. If you don't have anything pleasant to say, it's better to say nothing at all. I wouldn't care how uninspired it sounds. I wouldn't care how generic it may appear. That is what I would demand if I were the owner. If I were the head coach and had the authority to enforce it, I would expect my staff and players to adhere to that principle. We keep all of our substantive conversations and strategic motivations in-house. That is the standard I would expect. However, I must confess I am rather pleased that people do not actually operate that way. I truly am. While it's not the approach I would personally mandate, it delights me. I don't mind when the NFL occasionally takes on a slight semblance of the WWE. And to reiterate, it's not as if Brian Flores was explicitly attempting to create such a spectacle. It was more of a tongue-in-cheek observation, but it remains a public comment nonetheless. It still qualifies as a remark made for public consumption, and the undeniable reality is that the Minnesota Vikings have performed terribly from the moment they allowed Sam Darnold to depart in free agency. It's just an objective fact. They have been awful. They have been profoundly disappointing. They have been notably deficient at the quarterback position. Conversely, from the moment Sam Darnold arrived in Seattle, the Seahawks have been exceptional. They have been outstanding. They have been an elite-level team. They possess a legitimate, clear pathway to the Super Bowl. They have a genuine opportunity to win the Super Bowl this very year. The Minnesota Vikings categorically do not. Therefore, I am incredibly enthusiastic about this upcoming game. I was already immensely excited for this contest initially, simply because it's Seahawks versus Vikings, and it marks the return of Sam Darnold. I am profoundly fond of these narrative-driven games. I adore these moments. I thrived on them during my own playing days, even when I was very young. When you find yourself competing against, for instance, a former coach who had guided your team the previous year. When you're 10 years old, he was your coach, but now at 11, you have a new coach, and you are utterly determined to defeat that former team, whatever the context. Even when the stakes were minuscule, perhaps in an intramural league or a similar setting, the feeling was, I am competing against you, and I cannot wait. I assure you that intrinsic motivation never dissipates. I promise you that Sam Darnold has experienced that exact sensation since he was 10 years old. When he was 18, when he was 20, it is irrelevant. You simply always crave that competitive vindication. You perpetually desire it. It is something that every single athlete can relate to and identify with, because I guarantee they have all experienced it. They all want to compete against their friends, their former teammates, their previous mentors. Whether it's a casual game of intramural basketball, a collegiate matchup, or a professional contest, the principle remains. It is an impulse that is deeply embedded within your competitive soul. Consequently, I feel a powerful connection to these types of games. I genuinely do. And now, you are simply adding more combustible material to an already raging fire. Oh mama, this entire scenario is beginning to evoke a feeling reminiscent of when a certain analyst declared, "No, this Seattle Seahawks team commits too many errors. They have to travel across the country to face the Washington Commanders on a Monday Night Football stage. This team is incapable of handling that kind of pressure." And my internal response was, what are you even discussing? This is the one team in the NFL that supposedly doesn't know how to board an airplane and fly to a different state? What are you talking about right now? They make too many mistakes? I generally refrain from making grandiose pronouncements before games. I truly do. I prefer to maintain a relatively neutral and grounded perspective heading into contests. I simply enjoy observing the games unfold organically. I've stated this frequently. I am significantly more invested in and interested in post-game analysis rather than pre-game speculation. Attempting to make precise predictions seems somewhat frivolous to me. Whenever anyone asserts, I believe they will win 27-23, my internal reaction is always, sure, whatever you say. My approach to pre-game commentary is typically to anticipate what the prevailing narrative will be based on various potential outcomes. That is how I generally frame my pre-game thoughts, rather than attempting to prophesize the exact result. However, there are certain specific moments where I feel compelled to just throw caution to the wind and fully embrace a prediction. So, I am stating it clearly. I cannot wait for this game. I am utterly fascinated. I am so eager. This game has become exponentially more tantalizing and compelling for me now. There are several peculiar matchups this weekend. Some games that, in the grand scheme, fundamentally do not carry significant weight. There are other contests, like the Packers versus the Lions, the Chiefs versus the Cowboys, the Eagles versus the Bears, which should all be fantastic games in their own right, but they require a more nuanced analysis to decipher their meanings and implications, which I also appreciate. This Seahawks-Vikings game, however, is uncomplicated. This is straightforward. Let's deliver a decisive beating. Let's just dominate the Vikings. Let's just put a stop to all the nonsensical talk. With playmakers like Jackson Smith-Njigba, a motivated Sam Darnold, a reliable target like Cooper Kupp, and this violently physical, brutal, and punishing defense, I cannot wait. I simply cannot wait. Those are simply my personal reflections and opinions. I would absolutely be delighted to hear your own. What are all of your thoughts concerning the Seattle Seahawks' current trajectory? What is your perspective on the overall sense of contentment and success that Sam Darnold has seemingly found? A situation that the Minnesota Vikings might now reflect upon with a degree of what could have been. Please share your viewpoints in the comment section below. I make it a point to read every single comment that is posted, irrespective of whether you are in full agreement with me or you fundamentally disagree. Either way, let's ignite some engaging discussions. Let's engage in some spirited debates. But when all is said and done, let's simply enjoy the experience and have a great time. Please do consider subscribing to the channel. We are in the process of cultivating a truly wonderful community here, and I would absolutely be thrilled to have you as a part of it. My ambition is to build something that we all feel a genuine connection to, something that we are truly enthusiastic and proud to be involved with, and I believe we are making significant progress toward achieving that objective. Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it genuinely and substantially assists with visibility within the platform's algorithm. Thank you so very much for your time and engagement.